Before I get underway here with the rejuvenation process as it relates to the physical, I'd just like to say the intention here with this presentation is not to go into some complex physiology or scientific terms that you would learn in an anatomy and physiology course at a university. My intention here is to keep it very simple and tangibly relatable to a common person. We're not going to go into complex concepts. Instead, actually, I want to keep this simple and yet cutting through to the most important components, wherein if you understand them, you'll be able to immediately benefit by applying that knowledge. So as I mentioned earlier in the introduction, I'm going to do this by talking predominantly about, one, the skeletal system. If you take your hand and reach down to the front of your knee, press firmly on your kneecap there, that's referred to as your patella. You'll feel there is a definite solidity to this, isn't there? If you go a little higher up the thigh there and squeeze onto your thigh with your hands, do that now, you'll feel that it's not as dense as the patella, it's not as firm, and yet there is certainly a solidity to it. Your hand's not passing through it, is it? It's definitely stopped by your musculature here. Now, as it relates to your physical body, of course, you have organs within your physical body, but you can't touch those. So I'm referring here in relation to the musculoskeletal system, specifically so that we can comprehend how we can manipulate those variables so that you can move more effectively, thereby enhance your energetic productivity, eliminate pain and dysfunction, and basically operate at a much higher potential. So when we refer to your physical movement, we're referring to that which is termed your biomechanics, by referring to the body, and mechanics referring to the movement, right? So the question really comes down to, how well does your body move? Certainly, if you are experiencing fatigue on a day-to-day basis or pain, this will indicate to you that you have major imbalances within your system that need to be resolved, right? So what it really comes down to is efficiency. This is an important component in relation to your biomechanics. How efficient are you with your movement? Now take, for example, you're driving a car. If you have the brakes applied, you're not going to be very efficient with moving forward, are you? Now, even if you have the brakes slightly applied, there's going to be a little bit of drag on your momentum forward, and that's going to inhibit your ability to move to the direction that you want to in an efficient way. Likewise with the human body, there are various components that can act as a drag upon your movement and thereby not only drain your energy but potentially create a lot of wear and tear, just like a disc brake would be squashing against the wheel there, being ground down unnecessarily if it's applied even to a slight degree whilst the car is moving forward. So let's have a look at some of the components of the inefficiency. Now if you look at this picture here on the side, you'll see here's a person standing nice and straight here. Obviously looks a lot better than this picture here, isn't it? Now let me point out a couple of things with this one on the right hand side. What we have here is forward head posture. It's not directly over the rest of the body, it's forward relative to the midline. We've got shoulders that are forward as well. You've got an excessive, what's called thoracic curve here, which is otherwise referred to as kyphosis in terms of the postural condition. An excessive lumbar curve through here, through the low back, that's referred to as lumbar lordosis. And there are other various components that are unseen within the hips and the angle of the legs there that we may touch on at a later point. Now the point being is if your body is not aligned correctly, like this one as it relates to gravity, if it's all bent out of position like this, what you'll find is that your body is very inefficient in the way that it functions. Not only energetically, but when you're moving, you'll get more wear and tear, which may lead to injury. It will indeed lead to injury at a later point. But it'll also potentially cause you pain at some point, right? That is why it's very important to align your musculoskeletal system properly so all of the bones are articulating correctly, that is to say, joining together at the joints effectively to promote the least wear and tear and enhance your movement. So speaking to that point of joints coming together, that's really referred to as structural stability. Now, if you imagine your shoulder joint, for example, is you probably haven't, you may not have seen the structure of the anatomy of the shoulder joint, but what you have is essentially a curved surface of the shoulder blade like that, and a ball joint. This may not look very much like a ball, but let's imagine that it is, of the arm that comes off your shoulder blade there. They fix together, and the shoulder joint works very, very well if it's fixed together nicely. If you lift your arm out to the side, it slides nicely in the joint there and comes back down, moves forward, moves back, because it's a ball and socket joint. Now, can you imagine if it wasn't fixed into the joint very well, if it was moving up a little bit, for example, when you go to lift it? Well, that's often the case when people generate shoulder injuries such as subacromial impingement, which is very common, or a rotator cuff tear is also very common. It's often because there is instability within the joint. So needless to say, it's very, very important that the nuts and bolts, as it were, holding the joint structure together, are done up nice and tight, so it's held together, but also not so tight that it can't move properly. You need the correct balance there. Structural stability is another important component if you want your system to operate well. Another thing is simply the way that you move. Now, this is a little ambiguous as to what the correct technique is. That can't be explained in a short space of time, but if you can imagine that if the bones are lining up absolutely perfectly in a way that the load that you're lifting is shared equally throughout all joint structures as you move forward, that would be referred to as an efficient technique, wouldn't it? Conversely, if someone were to pick something up off the ground, and what is very typical is that because of imbalances within the spinal position and tension ratios within the leg muscle groups, often it's the case that the low back takes more load or the knees takes more load, and over a few years you'll find that that will be wear and tear, and you'll get suddenly, a sharp pain in your back or a sharp pain in your knees that may become a long-term issue. Now, needless to say, you want to resolve that, and one of the most important things to resolving that is to get your technique right. That's something that we can immediately assess if you can come into the studio, Wellness in Motion, and I can take a quick look at the way that your body moves, or one of the other PTs or exercise physiologists. We'll be able to immediately see where the technique is not correct and show you what to do to resolve that. Now, here's another component that is very important in relation to efficiency, and we're really going into the neurology here, which we'll talk more to in the third presentation. But here's a very common thing. I mentioned how sometimes people will pick something up and they'll get a sharp pain in their back. Now, often this is what's happening. If you can imagine that you're bending over here, and this is actually an extended spine, but when you bend over and then when you stand back up, the spine has to extend. That means your chest is moving up toward the ceiling. And what happens is often, if things are too tight and your technique's not correct, and if the core's not functioning very well, you'll get a compression of the discs through here, right? See these discs in between the bones? If they become compressed, then you can do damage through here, which can end up actually impinging upon the nerves. And you see here a compressed spinal nerve. There's the nerve that exits the spine. Tangibly, here it is on the human body, the low back here. You see the nerves coming out of that, specifically the sciatic nerve. It's very common to be damaged. Now, if this is being squashed, you can imagine there'll be pain signals that come down the leg. You'll get interference in the way that the leg functions and so forth. And although you might feel the pain even as far down as the foot, it's actually starting up here in the spine. So needless to say, you don't want spinal compression, and that is a big problem for a lot of people. I've previously done a webinar on how to resolve back pain. If you'd like to view that, then let us know. We'll send you the link, and you can learn more about that if that's an issue for you. But moving on for now, right? Now, another thing, and this is also moving more into the second presentation in relation to the biochemistry, energy moving through particularly the vascular system, and how that is delivered to the various circuitry of the body. Now, you'll see in this picture here on the left is that you have the digestive tract here. This is where you're breaking down the food that you're eating. And the way that that food gets to the rest of the body is that it's digested, We'll have a look more at the mechanics of that in presentation number 2. And what ends up happening is it comes into the bloodstream and begins to circulate through the system, right? These are the arteries, the red ones, that deliver the energy from the food to the rest of the body. You can see how that happens there. Here's a more specific view. You can see how we have these big major blood vessels that come down and up the body. My mouse cursor is being a little problematic, but coming all the way down here, delivering, you see here, through to the hips, down to the legs, and of course up and through the arms, down to the forearm and hand. So if that is not working properly, your cardiovascular system and your digestive system, you'll have a problem with energy delivery. As you'll know from your own experience, if you don't have enough energy to do the tasks that you need to do, that is very arduous. It causes you to mentally suffer through it. And who the hell wants to be going through life doing things and suffering, right? When oftentimes it's just simply that you need to have a functioning vehicle, you need to have enough energy, and life's pretty enjoyable when you have those two components on your side. All right, so those are a few points in relation to the efficiency. Another main thing or consideration in relation to the biomechanics or body movement is your strength. So let's break that down into a couple of different things here. One, you have specific strength, and that is you can perform a certain action with a high degree of force. I've got an example here of the guy here who's a bodybuilder, obviously, sitting in this machine, and he's doing a isolated triceps push down. It's going to isolate this muscle here, and he can push down very, very hard because he's been practicing that. Now, what I want to point out here is that although that may build a lot of muscle through here very effectively, that's important for someone that wants to build muscle. If you look at your life situation and consider how often is it that you're sitting in a seat needing to push very, very hard down. It's not that likely, is it? Unless you are, in a plane and you suddenly bust and go to the toilet, you have to put your arms on the side of the chair there and push out and then rush down the aisle there, which is kind of unlikely, isn't it? That might serve you that situation, but other than that, it's really only benefiting the appearance of the body. So the other way that you can strengthen the body is called functional strengthening. Say, for example, you're on the ground and you need to place your hand upon the ground and push yourself effectively off the ground to get yourself off the ground. Now, that might not seem like an important task for someone that's young, but ask the older demographic, the seniors as it were, the older adults, and you'll get commonly a response that says, oh yeah, I have trouble getting off the ground. I wish I could just get off the ground like I used to be able to do when I was younger. So having functional strength and be able to move your body simply through a natural range of motion wherein you can undertake the basic functional tasks in life is very, very important, particularly as we age. Now, here's another really important component in addition to the efficiency and the strength of the body in relation to how well it operates. That's our flexibility. And this is a component that is often underrated. We often, if we are doing some exercise at all, go to strengthening and so forth, or cardiovascular fitness if we're wanting to lose weight. And oftentimes we just save a couple of token stretches for the last part of the workout, perhaps 5 minutes. Now, I want you to consider for a moment, if you spend all of your time contracting the muscles, then what you're going to be doing is practicing shortening the muscles, isn't it? The reason why the arm, the hand moves toward the face when I contract my biceps here is because the muscle is shortening. It draws the hand toward my face. Now, the opposite to that is lengthening, which is actually what is happening when you are working on the flexibility of your muscles. You're creating longer muscles, and that is actually going to be very, very important, not only to ensure that your body is comfortable and also to enhance the nutrient delivery within the system. We'll touch on that in the second and third presentations, but it's going to cause you to be able to function effectively too. Because if your nerves can't grow into your muscles because they're too tight, then what you'll find is that you are in pain and your body won't be innervated effectively. We just touched on that in relation to the back pain and the sciatic pain down the legs. So if you maintain a good flexibility workout, you'll find that you can keep your range of motion really healthy, you can eliminate the tension within your system, and that will really alleviate not only pain but also allow you to function effectively in your life. So how to resolve these issues? Now, the most effective way that we can offer, of course, is that you simply come into the studio and we take a look at how you move. If you're here in person, myself or one of the other PTs or exercise physiologists can immediately get a really good idea about where the imbalances are and what you need to do to overcome these, right? So by going through these specific tests, we can identify your specific needs, and thereby we can specifically organize a personalized plan relating to what areas need to be strengthened, what areas need to be released, where are the biomechanical issues that need to be resolved through developing a more effective technique, for example. We can identify a specific plan that's going to work for you, and then of course give you some specific advice on that. Now, if you don't have the benefit of being able to come in to see us personally, we can potentially do this non-locally as well. All right, we can book an online consultation, and believe it or not, it's quite valuable to be able to utilize our great network of video apparatus that has really sprung up more effectively over the COVID period. That was one silver lining from that period, wasn't it? Is that we have this online software operating effectively, and we can now utilize that more effectively. So one of the ways that we do that is to jump on a Zoom call, get you to do a few movements in front of the camera, and thereby be able to identify how your body's moving. As well, by talking to you, we can identify what's not working and get a pretty good idea about how we can help you in that way. So after that, then we can really identify suitable online services such as our online physical training program. If you need to engage some coaching services and so forth, then we can make a recommendation of how we can effectively help you in that way. All right, so by that means you can progress at your own pace from home. If you can't make it into the studio, that's what I suggest. We'll be able to help you just through that simple online method. All right, so that's us for the physical presentation. I hope you've enjoyed it. In the next session, we're going to go into part B, or number 2, if you like. That would be referring to the biochemical, where we'll refer to the cardiovascular system, the digestive system, and how the fluid element moves through our system. Moreover, how you can make that more efficient, that process of biochemistry as it functions through the human body, so that you can enhance your health, rejuvenate your system, and overcome issues, specifically health issues and degenerative issues within the system. Okay, so bye for now. I'll look forward to seeing you in the next one, and thanks for watching.